Hi everyone, welcome to Infinite Women. I'm Allison, and today I wanted to discuss what makes a Disney princess feminist or not. I recently rewatched the 90s Disney animated version of Mulan, and it got me thinking about what makes a classic story feminist. And so, to be clear, I do see this as a spectrum. It's not a clear cut yes or no. So, if we look at Disney movies as an example, past decades saw characters like Sleeping Beauty and Snow White who are basically in a coma, or Ariel who gives up her ability to speak and potentially her life in pursuit of a hot guy she literally has never even talked to. But even then, Ariel is checking one of my feminism boxes that Aurora and Snow White don't: agency. She has identified something that she wants, and she spends the whole movie going after that goal. And I will get into her motivation more later on because it is about more than Prince Eric. But agency is, in my opinion, the most basic criteria. Aurora and Snow White, meanwhile, fall in love with random guys that they run into in the forest. But even then, they're not the ones driving the plot. They're kind of the definition of a passive object rather than an active subject. In Sleeping Beauty, Maleficent, the fairies, Prince Philip, and her parents are all more active in this movie than our title character. And the same is true of the evil queen, the huntsman, the dwarves, and the prince in Snow White. Like, you could even make the case that the magic mirror, a literal object, drives the plot more than the girl who's meant to be our protagonist. Another key point is overcoming obstacles. Aurora and Snow White really don't do that. Other people overcome obstacles to save them. And they're really similar, like Aurora's parents and the huntsman save them as children, the fairies and the dwarves protect them, and then the princes save them. But bringing it back to Mulan, this was one of various reasons that the live action version sucked. Because animated Mulan didn't have these special magic powers that they gave the live action version, which is also nothing to do with the original Ballad of Mulan. She had to not only work hard, but use her intelligence and creative thinking to achieve things by playing to her strengths. She's overcoming expectations by finding solutions that don't even occur to other people, in addition to her hard work earning her strength, speed, and fighting prowess. And that is why I will literally and unashamedly tear up at the "I'll make a man out of you" song. You could also apply this to Rapunzel from Tangled. Like, yes, she has magic hair, but she also demonstrates that she's incredibly persuasive, which is particularly impressive since she's grown up in isolation, albeit with a narcissist as her only human interaction. She turns Flynn's enemies into allies, and that saves both of them, both in the moment and in the long run. I also think saving yourself is an important aspect, although I do love a "we saved each other" narrative like we got in Tangled. But over and over again in princess stories, we see a damsel getting saved by a prince, even if she is taking the initiative to make that happen. Here, I would juxtapose the Brandy live-action Rodgers and Hammerstein Cinderella from 1997 with the animated Disney version from 1950. So obviously they're pretty similar stories, but Brandy's Cinderella is literally packing her bag, because she only has one, preparing to leave her stepmother's house when the prince comes along. She was minutes away from saving herself from her situation regardless of what he did. Now, with that said, I will give animated Cinderella a point here because she was planning to attend the ball and only needed her fairy godmother to step in because her stepfamily tore her dress to shreds and then flounced off to the ball themselves. Brandy's Cinderella was just gonna stay home until Whitney Houston showed up and gave her a pep talk and fancy shoes. Seriously, go watch it if you haven't seen it, if only for the amazing cast. And while we all know that the 2021 Cinderella girl bossification fell painfully flat, the 1990s also gave us Ever After. So if you want an explicitly feminist Cinderella, Drew Barrymore already nailed that back in 1998. Next, I wanted to talk about motivation. Again, Aurora and Snow White don't really have a motivation because they're just that passive. Ariel's motivation is that, yes, she wants Prince Eric, but she also wants to experience life on land. That is her lifelong obsession, much more so than this hot guy. I think the movie really does frame it in a way where, yes, Eric might be the focal point, but it's clear that there is much more to her making this choice than going after him on his own. It's literally the basis for her I Want song, the piece in a musical where a character shares their deepest hopes and dreams with the audience. In Part of Your World, she's singing about how she wants to be where the people are. She wants to experience having legs to run and dance and jump. Yes, she is singing to his statue and therefore to him, but it's his world that has really caught her attention and that she really longs for. We see this with Jasmine from Aladdin as well. She's really not impressed with him as a person, but she is desperate to see more of the world beyond her palace, and that's how he woos her, by showing her a whole new world. Mulan and Belle from Beauty and the Beast are both trying to save their fathers, but Mulan is also trying to prove herself and her worth, which you also see from Merida in Brave. Cinderella's motivation isn't really made clear why she wants to go to the ball, if it's to meet the prince, to go to this fancy party and maybe just have a new and exciting experience, or to stand up to her stepfamily. And then it's also not explicit whether she wants to be with the prince versus just getting away from her family to a life of luxury. Like, I would assume it's both, but she's not a well-developed enough character for us to really get an idea of what's going on in her mind. One aspect that might sound weird is that, in my opinion, feminist heroines are allowed to mess up. They are not the sweet, lovely, perfect victims like Snow White and Aurora. Having agency fundamentally means being able to make mistakes, and a lot of plots will center on fixing them and or resolving why you messed up in the first place, like Merida accidentally turning her mom and brothers into bears as a direct result of her issues with her mom. Look, we've all been there, okay? Elsa losing control of her ice magic is the inciting incident of Frozen, and she has to address the internal trauma that led to that, as well as choose to repair her relationships and undo the practical damage of that action. I also like to see relationships with other women, and not in strictly negative ways, like Snow White and her stepmother. You can understand why a story like Mulan has pretty much all of her key relationships being with men, but even before and after the army, her connection to her father is clearly the more important and stronger one than compared to her mother and grandmother, who want her to fit the typical feminine model. The first song is quite literally about how she doesn't fit in with other women. And then it's her dad who comforts her. It's her dad she's trying to save, and it's her dad who welcomes her home while her mom and grandma are at a distance, and her grandma complains in the background that she didn't bring home a man. And even in that first scene, we see her father and her relationship with him before we meet her mom and grandma. And to be clear, I love Mulan and her dad's dynamic, and it does really enhance the story because protecting him is her motivation, but he would never have wanted her to endanger herself. It is the most important relationship in the movie, so it is necessary for the story that her mom and grandma take a back seat. It also helps, in my opinion, that there's no not like other girls energy. Mulan feels like a failure, but she's not dismissive or critical of other women or femininity. It's just not her strong suit. But then she's later able to weaponize that exact femininity to save the emperor, set to a refrain of the Be a Man song. Perfection. And I don't mind negative or neutral female relationships when it's balanced out, like Aurora's threatened by Maleficent, but then she's raised by the three good fairies. But it's pretty blatant when a lot of these stories really give these women few, if any, female friends. And no, I'm not counting animals, which also seem to often be male anyway, like Pascal and Maximus in Tangled, Raja in Aladdin, and Mushu, Kriki, and Khan in Mulan. Ariel explicitly doesn't get along with her sisters. Belle doesn't have any female friends in her village. The only neighbor we see being kind to her is the elderly male bookseller, while everyone else literally sings about how weird she is. And then at the castle, Cogsworth and Lumiere are the ones that she seems to talk to the most, so I'd probably put Mrs. Potts in third place on that front. Snow White is living with 7 dudes. Jasmine and Rapunzel are isolated from everyone to the point that their only friends are male animals. And Cinderella's entirely female family treat her horribly. And even once Rapunzel escapes her tower entangled, she's still not making female friends, even as she is forming attachments with male characters. Flynn, the horse Maximus, and all the thugs from the Snuggly Duckling. Like, I looked it up, and there are 17 pub thugs listed, and not one of them is female. Okay, feminism means that women can be thugs too. I do think this is one reason that people respond so well to movies like Brave, Encanto, Turning Red, and Frozen, because they all deal with troubled family dynamics between female characters, and how those relationships are healed, and the women and girls are able to move forward together with these strong bonds. And it doesn't have to be familial. Like, Moana's relationship with her grandmother is absolutely beautiful, but it's her ability to understand another female character, to recognize that she is in pain, to understand what she needs, and to help her. That is what saves everyone in the end. And a through line that you may have noticed is internal life. Fundamentally, a feminist story has to have a 3-dimensional, well-developed lead who feels like a real person, including one with flaws. You can't just have a female title character, she has to be a good character. In Sleeping Beauty and Snow White, the villains and side characters have more personality and what's called interiority than our titular princesses. Interiority is what's going on inside, a character's thoughts and feelings and issues. And I'd argue that no one does it better in this genre than Encanto, which is all about characters' feelings and their root causes, quite literally the root cause in Isabella's case, as well as the impacts that these have on the characters themselves and those around them. We see how their relationship dynamics both shape and are shaped by what's going on inside them, and that makes for such a richer story. So that's all I had, but I'd love to know your thoughts on what makes a story feminist or not, if you want to leave it in the comments below. And join us next time on Infinite Women, because well-behaved women rarely make history.